is said that during the forced removal of the Cherokee Nation from their eastern homelands in 1838, that the women were overcome with sadness and despair. They could not make the 1,000-mile journey so stricken with grief. The men saw the suffering and prayed to the Great One for the strength for their women and their people. The next morning, the people saw that a flower had grown every place a woman's tear had fallen. The flowers had white petals for the purity of their sadness and loss, 7 leaves for each of the Cherokee clans, and gold centers for the greed of the white man. These flowers, Cherokee roses, still grow from North Carolina and Georgia all the way into Oklahoma, and are said to reclaim the land stolen from the Cherokee people. This forced removal would come to be known as the Trail of Tears, or as the Cherokees say, Nunya Huduna Slo Hi Lui, the place where they cried. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act into law, giving him authority to remove the Native Americans of the Southeast to lands west of the Mississippi. With this act in place, Jackson was able to threaten and force tribes into signing treaties, giving their land away forever. With the signing of the first treaty by the Choctaw of Mississippi, the removal began. Over the next decade, tens of thousands of Native Americans would be forced to walk one of the 4 trails leading to Indian Territory, or modern-day Oklahoma. With as little as the clothes on their backs, these tribes, the Choctaw, Muskogee, Chickasaw, Seminole, and Cherokee, were marched over 800 miles at gunpoint. Many died from exposure, starvation, and exhaustion along the way, in one of the most shameful acts in U.S. history, known today simply as the Trail of Tears.
We're despoiled of our private possessions. We're stripped of every attribute of freedom and eligibility for legal self-defense. Our property may be plundered before our eyes. Violence may be committed on our persons. Even our lives may be taken away. Our hearts are sickened when we reflect on the condition in which we are placed by the audacious practices of unprincipled men.
You, sir, will bring down that renowned chair in which you sit into infamy if your seal is set to this instrument of perfidy, the Treaty of New Echota. In the name of this nation, hitherto the sweet omen of religion and liberty will stink to the world.
Cherokees, the President of the United States has sent me with a powerful army to cause you to join your people on the other side of the Mississippi. Will you then, by resistance, compel us to resort to arms? God forbid. I am an old warrior and have been present at many a scene of slaughter, but spare me, I beseech you, the horror of witnessing the destruction of the Cherokees.
After all the warning, and with the soldiers in their midst, the inevitable day appointed found the Indians at work in their houses and in their fields. 2 or 3 dropped their hoes and ran as fast as they could when they saw the soldiers coming into the field. The men handled them gently, but picked them up in the road, in the field, anywhere they found them, part of a family at a time, and carry them to a post or fort.
Considering the number and temper of the mass to be removed, it will readily occur that simple indiscretions, acts of harshness and cruelty on the part of the troops may lead in the end to a general war and carnage. Therefore, every possible kindness must therefore be shown by the troops.
The soldiers came and took us from our home. They first surrounded our house, and they took the mayor while we were at work in the fields, and they drove us out of doors and did not permit us to take anything with us, not even a second change of clothes. They drove us off to a fort that was built at New Echota.
Thus, in 2 or 3 days, about 8,000 people, many of whom were in good circumstances and some rich, were rendered homeless, houseless, and penniless, and exposed to all the ills of captivity. In driving them, a platoon of soldiers walked before and behind, and a file of soldiers on each side, armed with all the common appalling instruments of death. While the soldiers, it is said, would often use the same language as if driving hogs, and goad them forward with their bayonets. One man, on being pricked thus and seeing his children thus goaded on, picked up a stone and struck a soldier. Before this, he was handcuffed, and on arriving at the fort was punished, and on starting again was whipped 100 lashes.
At this very moment, a low sound of distant thunder fell upon my ear. In almost an exact western direction, a dark spiral cloud was rising above the horizon and sent forth a murmur. I almost fancied a voice to divine indignation for the wrongs of my poor and unhappy countrymen. Driven by brutal power and all that he loved, cherished in the land of their fathers, to gratify the cravings of avarice.
Oh, how heart-rending was the sight of those little sufferers, their little blue lips trembling with cold. We wept and wept again. Our prayer is that these dear children, who must doubtless be soon be ushered into eternity, may be taken into the arms of their Redeemer. The government might more mercifully have put to death everyone under a year or over 60 years of age. Rather, it has chosen a most expensive and painful way of exterminating these poor people.
One will not hear the anguished voice of a forgotten and broken people. Instead, one might hear the pride of a people who faced overwhelming adversity and persevered.
The Cherokee lived in the southern Appalachian Mountains, their land stretching from North and South Carolina into Tennessee, down into Georgia and Alabama, and included hunting land in Kentucky.